What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Industry Update, a part of the Gaming Grounds Podcast Network. I'm sure everybody really enjoyed the last podcast. We had a few comments and a couple talking points that people really enjoyed. So, really excited about that and glad to hear about it. I am joined with my co host and partner in crime here, Guzzy, Kai Guy, whatever I want to call him at this time. And welcome, Guzzy. How are you doing today?
I am swell. How are you?
Swell. All right. Very
Let's change up the vocab a little bit.
Yeah, change up the monotony. I get you. All right. And, so last week we talked about some very interesting topics, and it was really cool to get a lot of input from people, as well as after we were done podcasting, kind of talk a little bit more about the topic and talking about a continuation, which will be really exciting and very cool. But this week, I know I say it every week, but this week in particular, we have another very interesting topic that I know a lot of people that listen to this are interested in talking about when it comes to the business side of the gaming world, and that is collegiate esports and kind of what that means to esports in general, as well as the university and college system that we have, and possibly how that's going to change. How people get scholarships, why people choose schools, and kind of how the universities and colleges are going to operate from here on out. It's very different, and when we looked at it and did our research, we found some really interesting talking points. So that's why we wanted to bring it up and kind of discuss this. Did I hit the nail on the head there, Guzzy?
Yeah, you did. Good job. Proud of you.
All right, perfect. So I guess to get this ball rolling, Guzzy, what do you think about like college and esports and that coming together?
I think it's honestly very interesting. Obviously, the larger universities will have the funding for programs with esports, and it might not just be one game; it might be 10 games or whatever. Um, but the fact that there's also the varsity level of esports and they're giving out scholarships is very cool. Then there's also the club level. I actually partook in a League of Legends tournament one day, my freshman year of college, and yeah, I suck at League of Legends, so we got third. And it was a 3v3 tournament, so like it was fun. It was just like a video game club, not necessarily esports club, but a video game club, and it kind of had like a little bit of a it had a vibe going with it that yeah, there's video game tournaments on campus, which was actually really cool.
Oh, that's great. No, that's really cool. And you bring up a really good point because a lot of people tend to forget that there's a differentiation between club and varsity sports when it comes to the collegiate level. And it seems like your old college had kind of the beginnings of what is slowly becoming the norm at a lot of these colleges. And like you said, you touched on a very good point where it was coming into the limelight then with um, the basic structure to what would become for a lot of schools their first quote unquote club teams, and now even varsity teams, with schools even giving scholarships to people to play not only video games in general but certain video games. I know a lot of people saw the reports of a couple kids getting Fortnite scholarships to play for these teams. And even when it comes to that, like how these clubs and how these teams are getting funding from either their school or by themselves to go to these tournaments and play these games and do it beyond the fact, because a lot of tournaments, at least the quote unquote important tournaments, are land based or player based, where you have to be in person. It's not all over the internet. And I know the last Call of Duty came with the COD League, which was online, but these championships and these big major tournaments you were invited to, and you had to go and do these things. And when it comes to like a club who might not be getting any funding or has to fund themselves, it's very interesting to see how they get that money, and I think that's what leads to what's going to be very interesting later on in our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll be interesting to see that like I said, the larger universities have the funding for it, but what about the smaller universities? Like, is that something that they're willing to leap into? We had spoken last episode of Industry Update about exclusivity, and stuff like that, like to take another spin on it, is esports at a collegiate level going to be exclusive to these larger universities, or is it going to be exclusive to everybody, which would be actually very interesting. And if it's exclusive to everybody, obviously it's not exclusive, but not every school is going to be willing to hop into the esports world. I think it more comes down to um, depending on like what your school is known for. Like maybe it's a art type school, or maybe if it is just one of those large universities where you have a little bit of everything, it'll be very interesting to see how this collegiate esports actually turns out to be in the next few years.
Right. And then are some of these like is there going to be like an MLG or like a major sport like esport league where this becomes more of a norm or like a feeder league to getting drafted kind of like how the NCAA is with the NFL? Like will it become that kind of feeder system? Will there be support for that system? How will that structure work? Or will this be kind of like a proving ground for players or a minor league per se for where the professional teams go and look around for all these different leagues and all these different games trying to find their next replacement for their team, or like if you're a Cloud9 or something where you're starting a new game league or starting a new game team and you find them from there. It's going to be a really interesting topic, and I think we found the perfect person to talk about that because of their firsthand knowledge. Is that correct?
Yeah. So this person that we're going to introduce shortly, his name is Andrew. Um, I've known Andrew for years now. I actually worked for his dad at his dad's restaurant, and we've been playing games for years. And he goes to school, um, and to be honest with you, he did kind of start, just to give a little bit of background. He can touch on it more, but he started out, I believe, at the club level, like it was just a bunch of friends playing. But then someday, it just turned into, hey, let's just make this like an esport, at an actual varsity program, and he'll be able to tell us all about that. So, yeah, so let's just introduce Andrew and get him in here and see what he has to say about the esports collegiate level. So, Andrew, go ahead and say hi.
What's up, everybody?
So, Andrew, we do have a couple questions for you. Again, if you want to give a little bit of background with how it actually became an esports organization or esports collegiate program, go for it. But really, we just want to, run through a couple questions with you, and we'll just start it off with, why did you want to make it a varsity sport at your college?
Um, we really wanted to make it a varsity sport at our college because it was something that we were passionate about and liked doing. And it wasn't just me; it was one of my other good friends, Marcus. We both decided to do it at our school, and also we knew that there was other kids on campus too who would be interested in it. And then we also thought it would be a good experience for college too, that it would get more people in college, getting them connected to people like themselves.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a good way to think about it, and very cool. And I know that there's at least a few people that listen to our podcast that are kind of in the same shoes as you, or that you guys were, where there's people on campus that are interested in doing this and really want to become a part of this. I guess for like a better word, like movement to get esports more active in their communities and on their universities and colleges. So, like, what was kind of like the process for you to make it into like a club or a varsity sport at your college?
So the process of it kind of was long and short. It was long in the process that we did have to apply for it to be a club sport first, and that in itself we had to get passed by a board of people, which was at first it seemed like it was going to be a difficult challenge because there is resentment or the lack of willing to kind of support this. Once we got it as a club sport, though, we were meeting with people from the athletics department at our college, and they were looking to move it forward. So it went from a club sport to a varsity sport really fast. The long process was just getting it started as a club sport, though.
So I kind of think it's worth noting, Andrew. You don't have to say where you go to school, but the size of your college, how large would you say it is?
I would say around 2,000 students.
So with that being said, like I had mentioned, the larger universities are the ones that probably have the funding for programs like this. Um, I know Rutgers specifically has like an esports program of some sort, and Rutgers is a state school, and Andrew's going to a school that has around 2,000 students. Like that's huge, in my opinion, for a smaller school to be able to go through and create this as a varsity sport for something that, quite honestly, is super risky. It's not like it's the NFL where you're guaranteed, a player going on to the NFL. It's a video game, and that's such a new industry in the world to be able to play video games at a high level and make money off of it. Um, I just think it's really cool that a school of 2,000 students is actually able to do that and willing to do that. Um, so I guess going off of that, being such a small school, is there any kind of funding for scholarships at all with your program?
With our program, there is no scholarships. Also, since we're a D3 school, they don't give out athletic scholarships at our school.
All right, so that does make sense. Do you guys have like any kind of, I don't want to say incentive, but are you like provided equipment and whatnot that you need to be able to operate?
Yeah, all the equipment is provided for, like computers, headsets, mice, keyboard. The only thing that's not is mouse pads. That's the only thing that's not supported.
All right, well, that's not too bad then. It's good. The heavier lifting part of it seems to be taken care of, which is good. So do you guys do any like fundraising or anything like that to get support for your varsity team? Outside of it, like tournament wise or anything like that, like to raise money for the program?
Um, there was a fundraising campaign for the athletic teams on our campus recently, but we actually got excluded from this fundraising event, which is a hot topic amongst the esports players right now because a lot of people are annoyed that we got excluded from it.
No, that definitely makes sense, and
Do you
especially
honestly, do you mind elaborating on that though? Like the first thing that's come to my mind here is ESPN is, all these main sports. And then ESPN has an esports division, but you never hear anything esports. Like, do you think that has something to do with it?
I'm not sure. Mostly, their reasoning behind it for what they told us was they want us to reach out to like alumni and try to get donations from them. And their reasoning was there's only like 4 kids who graduated last year, so they thought that we couldn't raise money. But the thing was, all the money that we got to start up esports came from an alumni donor that had nothing to do with esports.
no kidding. Wow.
Honestly, that's so interesting. Like, I'm just thinking, like, you created this program, which is amazing, and props to you for doing that. But now it's like, is a school actually 100% on board with supporting you type of a thing? That's actually very interesting.
Yeah, that's a tough situation to be in, and hopefully as the years go on and the league stays, hopefully healthy and your varsity sport continues to grow and thrive, and as people graduate, you get a bigger alumni support network. But like you said, to get it started, you had somebody support and believe in what you guys were doing, and wasn't even part of this program that donated. It's really tough to see that the school didn't believe that you could be a part of that. But I guess in due time, hopefully that changes and that support and all that is there. But when it comes to I remember earlier you talking about how you transitioned from a club to a varsity sport. How did you approach the school in changing from a club to a varsity sport?
The initial process was us just reaching out to the president of our school and then getting in touch with the head of athletics at our school and just meeting and talking to them because they had a lot of questions on what would be needed, like equipment wise, like what games to play, like what's the scene like. So we had to do a lot of research and propose it to them so they knew like what they were getting into.
Okay, so that's great. So you did the due diligence that they required of you, and I guess they saw the potential in it and granted you varsity access, like the ability to go and be a varsity team. Is that right?
Yeah, they liked it because it's like a co-ed sport, so it's really like they like to make that public a lot, and also they they know that there's a lot of money going into the industry and that there's a lot of ways to make money. So that's also a reason a lot of colleges are getting into it now.
So you kind of mentioned a little bit about the resources and whatnot. Like what kind of structure do you actually have as a practicing squad and like actually able to compete? Obviously you got all the equipment up to the mouse pads, but like how do you find events to participate in and what resources go into those events? Like do you have to buy your way in? Like is the school paying that or is that for the students, like the esports players to pay for?
All the tournaments that we play in so far are either through TESPA or League runs a collegiate League of Legends tournament, which the schools don't have to pay in. Um, and a lot of the other tournaments are free to enter too. And even the tournaments that you have to buy into, it's not on the players, but more on either the school or the fundraising the team has done.
Oh, that's really cool. So that's good to know that these games and these leagues and these tournaments, a lot of them see that they need people to participate in these, and they don't want to have that entry barrier to start with. So that's really cool to see that League of Legends does that and supports that and understands that, as well as the fact that sometimes the school will front the fee, or being able to be allowed to fundraise to grow that fee is really good. And when it comes to like the teams that you have on this, do you only have like one team of people, or do you have a couple different rosters for a few different games?
I know for Hearthstone they run multiple rosters because Hearthstone allows for like multiple teams from a school to compete. When it comes to League of Legends and Overwatch, we can only sign up one team, but you can have almost all the players sign up on the roster. It's just when it comes to playing for League of Legends, you have to have 6 people submitted a week ahead of time, and so you have some flexibility with being able to move people in and out. When it comes to practicing, there is kind of like an A and B team format, like uh, amongst ourselves.
And how do you decide who's on the A team and on the B team?
Um, for right now, League of Legends is the only team at our school that has a coach, so he's the one deciding who's on the A and B team. And right now, we are going through kind of like tryouts, and he's just watching us play and who plays well together for him to submit the A roster because the League of Legends Collegiate Series, the registration started the first.
Is this coach a student as well, or is this like an outside resource that you guys have brought on to the program?
It's an outside resource to answer your question. They basically just advertise it as like a part time coaching job.
It's actually pretty cool. So obviously, this coach has to know a little bit about the game and whatnot. It's all honestly interesting to me, especially since your school is so small and given the resources that you have. Um, how's your organization or your program doing? Like, are you guys winning tournaments, or are you finding that it's tough to go up against these other universities that might have more resources to allow for more training in their programs?
So far this year, our Overwatch team has done pretty well. Seems like they took a lot of steps in the right direction. They got some new players in. League of Legends got a lot of new players in. I'm really looking forward to this season. I think it's going to be a lot better than last season, like skill wise. Um, Hearthstone had a lot of new players, but uh, they just weren't as composed as they were last year. Last year they had a really good season.
So that's really cool. It's seeing that you guys are going in the right direction and you're finding the right pieces to fit into not only one game but a bunch of different games and finding the players that really fit well and work well together, which is really cool. But when it comes to like practicing, like what's your schedule like when it comes to like preparing for a tournament and practicing your game to get your the tools of the trade, so to speak, better and up to par to compete with a lot of these other schools?
So right now every team practices for 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday, which is like required time to be in our esports lab playing. Other than that, it is encouraged that you play outside in your own time to get into more hours. When it comes to league, you kind of know around 5 days ahead of time what team you're going to be playing against. And so with that knowledge, you usually do like player scouting on the other team along with just like VOD reviews and practicing like your strategy going into it. So when you're in season, it's almost like a week worth of preparation before the series.
So it's pretty much like a traditional sport, so to speak, where you know your opponent, you watch the tape, you understand their strengths and weaknesses to the best of your ability. So going in, you kind of have a strategy not only on how you guys are going to be playing, but also coming up with a strategy that's going to be designed to give yourself the advantage to beating your opponent.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. It's very, like you said, traditional in that sense.
So one question that just keeps popping into my mind is, so there's no scholarships to this. Um, it's D3 and all that. What about walk-ons? Like, what happens if you get 30 people to come on? Like, do you make cuts? And if you do, where do you make the cuts? Like, what happens if I was a brand new league player and I decided to sign up? Would I be a part of the program, or do I actually have to like try out and be at a certain, I guess, rank that league has? Do I have to be a certain rank to be part of this program?
I don't think it's so much as your rank in game because we actually have a lot of people who just start playing and are overall pretty good at the game. The same thing is for Overwatch too. Like you have people like come over from other first person shooters and just kind of like start off like pretty good at it. Other than that, League does have 13 kids and you can only ever have six playing at once. So all 13 kids get to be on the roster, but when it comes to playing time, you're basically going to have 7 to 6 kids who aren't going to be playing unless like they improve or other players are just not working well. The good thing is that those other players still can sign up for their own tournaments too outside of the main collegiate tournaments.
Well, that's nice because that allows for other development to go through and whatnot. So that's actually positive to hear.
Yeah, it gives the other people on your roster a little chance to practice and get used to that tournament like setting, which is really cool. And I think another part of this, because you talked about joining or finding these tournaments? Like, how do you and your team and these other teams that focus on other games like find these tournaments to participate in?
TESPA is a really good source to find them. They always have a lot of the tournaments being posted on there. When it comes to the League of Legends, like League of Legends themselves promote it, like Riot Games promote the collegiate series. The collegiate series usually like partners with someone every season to get the funding. And and also for the collegiate League of Legends, they usually reach out to the schools and try to get the schools to do it. Like if they hear that they're having a program, sounds like for league, like we usually have people reaching out to our school asking for us to participate in tournaments.
Oh, so you can find like a really good flow of tournaments and stuff. There's not a lot of like dead time. Is there like a off season, or is there always tournaments running year round?
including the summer when you're not in session.
There's stuff always happening. When it comes to like in season, we're technically in season for the spring and fall. Um, Trying to do tournaments, so there is really like no downtime. I know over winter break, like during December, League of Legends will be having games. They're kind of like pre games for the collegiate series to get like rankings ahead of time. When it comes to this summer, I'm not really sure of any like mainstream tournaments, but there is smaller ones that you can sign up for.
And then I have one question. I'm not 100% sure if you know exactly the answer to this or not, but it just kind of popped in my head. We talked about how you're a D3 school and you follow the NCAA like rules, regulations, and sanctions. Um, is there any like in particular rules, regulations, or sanctions that the NCAA has for esports, or are you just to follow like certain rules that the NCAA has regarding like sports in general?
So that's actually a gray field because the esports itself is not part of the NCAA. They actually declined on it last year when it was up to vote. So, but the schools themselves is regulated by the NCAA, so we kind of have to follow some of the rules. But when it comes to others, we're not really, huh? Um, so when it comes to like their rules against not being able to like make money, that technically does not apply to us. So you could be like an esports player right now, like making money off of like endorsements, which you cannot be doing in another sport run by the NCAA.
Well, that was great, and thanks for that, and then clarifying that. Um, I'm pretty good on questions. I think we covered a lot and asked a lot of good questions. Gussie, do you have anything else?
I just have one more, and it's more of like a personal, like what I'm curious to know about. What's your major, Andrew?
Computer science and history.
Okay, so it's kind of a unique little bundle right there, but maybe you know this answer, maybe you don't. I don't know how many people in your program you know or you get to communicate with on a daily basis. What do you see as like the go-to major or a popular major in this program? Is it people that are computer science or like a technology related major, or is it really just all over the place and it's just people coming together to play video games?
Honestly, it's just all over the place. Like we have business majors, computer science majors, English majors, like criminology majors. So yeah, it's definitely like a whole mix of people. It's not just kids going to school like for programming. It brings together like the whole campus.
That's awesome. All right,
Yeah,
Morgz, that was my question, so I'm good.
all right. No, that was really cool, and I definitely learned a lot just from talking to him. And Andrew, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and talk to us. I hope we didn't cut into your gaming or your college life too much. And I know us here at the Gaming Grounds Podcast Network really appreciate you coming on the show to talk to us for a little bit. And I'm sure we'd love to have you on for other episodes and to talk and get a little bit more insight into what your team's going through, how you're doing, and how the team's doing this year. So thank you so much again.
So to piggyback off that, Morgz, I know I've kind of talked to you about this a little bit, but Andrew, if you'd be willing, I know you said you want to start looking into what an esport agent has to do and how to become one of them, and starting a business like that. Like that's honestly something that's a gray area. Sports agents in general, like a lot of people obviously want to be them because they can quickly make a lot of money or they get to talk to these professionals and whatnot. But esports is something that's very unheard of, and to have an agent in that industry would be very cool. So I know you're trying to take those steps. So that might be something in another episode that you may want to talk about. Like, why are you interested in this? Where are you gonna, take this? How are you gonna get started? Things like that. Like that would be also a very interesting episode because you not only play in the esports industry, but you also want to work in the esports industry.
Yeah, I'll definitely like to talk about that in a future episode. I also think it's a good area to talk about too because sports agencies definitely do play a major role in the sports like today. Like the main reasons players go to certain teams is because of their agents.
No, I definitely agree with you. And, on this segment of our podcast network, we talk about the business side of esports, and that's definitely up the alley of what we talk about. And I'm sure what a lot of people would love to hear because you hear of all the agents that come out of like football and these conglomerates and these major players in the game. And it'd be really interesting to see somebody that's in the process of trying to figure out the steps to take to get there and follow through with it when it comes to sports agency in the esports world, because I'm not sure if there's agents already in that world or if they're just regular agents that have decided to just give a couple people these contracts and when it comes to money splits and everything like that. So that would definitely be a very interesting topic that I'm sure we would love to talk to you about.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely love to talk about it because even for me, it's a great area because there's not a whole bunch of rules or regulations like the other sports have, like kind of moderating it. So it's kind of like a developing every day. So it's like I'm always learning new things or hearing new things about it too.
There's no rules or regulations yet. I'm sure they'll start trying to find ways to do it.
Oh yeah, definitely will be.
All right, very good. And then Guzzy, anything left you want to touch on before we sign this off and close it off?
No, I think I'm good. Andrew, thank you so much for your time and participating in this. And we do look forward to having you on another episode for whether it's a update on esports at the collegiate level or esports agent and whatnot. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and then is there anywhere that some of our listeners can send you a follow or follow your team as you go through the season that we can shout out for you?
We are working on having a college Twitch page for all the games to be streamed on, but they're still trying to set that up because they want it to like be like professional, like not like just like a normal bland channel. But once we get that, I could definitely send that to you guys if you want.
Okay, yeah. So definitely keep us posted on that, and we will send the link out for that, and make sure that people are aware that if they want to watch you and your team as you go through the season, and see what firsthand you guys go through, we will definitely do that. And this is about time where I send it over to Guzzy to talk about our social media stuff. Take it away, guys.
So on Facebook and YouTube, it's Gaming Grounds Network. Andrew, go subscribe. You can find us on all major podcasting platforms. Apple Podcasts is our go-to. We appreciate all of our listeners. And follow us on Twitter at Gaming Grounds. And the best way to communicate with us is either YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. We want your feedback. We want your comments, your questions, your concerns, anything. It would benefit us to create better content for you guys.
We're here to build the community. And again, thank you, Andrew, for getting on the show. I really appreciate it. And signing off from Industry Update, a part of the Gaming Grounds Podcast Network. This is Morgz and Guzzy signing off. Have a great day.
Deuces.